All right, how's everybody doing out there? Again, happy Friday, everybody. Crusty old crow back again. I am doing another tactical perspective video, but this one isn't the toy review. So if you are here to see my toy review on a figure, particularly on my Shockwave video, for Shockwave, for the subscribers out there, you're going to have to wait a few minutes, and I am going to get to that. There was a lot for me to take in about Shockwave, and I have some cool discussion points. I think they're cool, and I'm going to do that. This video isn't that video, so I'm gonna be doing my Remembrance Day kind of Afghanistan video, because I'm a vet, guys. Crusty old crow is a vet. I'm an Afghan vet. I have the PTSD. I have a perspective on this, and it's not a sad one, okay? I am not the effed up vet that's gonna come at you and cry about a bunch of guys. I won't lie, this is my second take of this video because, I did catch myself. There was like, what was that? An emotion that came in when I started talking about one of the boys, and, I went and did some chin-ups until it went away, because I'm not the guy that makes the angry videos. You see that in my G.I. Joe videos, guys. I could talk about where Hasbro falls short and bitch and moan and complain like some other videos choose to do, and maybe there's a market for that. But that ain't gonna be me. Maybe that keeps my market small. Maybe I never hit 1,000 subscribers. I do think I'll hit 100. I do think the word's getting out slow, that I have some stuff to say. But this video isn't about that stuff per se. It's about who am I on Remembrance Day and about the guys I know and I have an obligation to tell you about. And that's an obligation I put on myself because it's weird being this age, being a retired vet, and doing a YouTube channel is something so foreign to me. It's not what I am. Am I used to public speaking? Absolutely. I was an instructor for several years teaching leadership courses and Bold Eagle courses, which is teaching Aboriginal and First Nation youth and whatnot, the basic soldiering skills and integrating them and showing them, what we do. I know how to talk to kids, I know how to talk to teenagers, and I know how to talk to adults. I don't really know how to talk to everybody else. But I know how to talk about this stuff, and I know what I want to say about it. And so Remembrance Day is going to be a rough day for a lot of people tomorrow, and I looked at my demographic, and I know most of you are south of the border, and there's a couple Canadians in there, and I think I know all the Canadians that are there because I think they're vets. And I know a lot of you Americans, my friends to the south, I think some of you are vets too, if I recall. In fact, I know so. And maybe tomorrow's kind of a weird day for you too. And so one thing I'm not doing tomorrow, I'm not making a video. That's why I'm doing it today. So again, if you're not here for that kind of a video, it's okay. I don't take offense if nobody watches a video. I don't take offense if nobody likes a video. And if my subscriptions don't go up, I don't take that offense either. I just say the conversation wasn't the right flavor of the day for these guys. Not how you sat on your toilet and scrolled through your phone. You didn't come across something that I had to say that you were interested in. And that's fine. This might very well be one of those things. Or you might want to get to know these three guys I'm about to talk about. These three guys are friends of mine that I have a different kind of connection with each of them. And I lost all three of them. Our squadron lost all three of them on the same tour. It was my second tour to Afghanistan, and in order to understand this, I have to kind of go through a few pictures and just kind of keep it specific. But on my first tour to Afghanistan is where I met my friend Ed Morley, who you met in one of my previous videos. If you watch the video about the Crimson Bat, I think I said it was a roundtable discussion. My friend Nick worked the camera. My other friend Rick was in the background, staying out of the video. My friend Ed Morley was the one that was also talking about the figurine that day. Me and Ed have a long history of being in the same place at the same time on tours. And we did our 2004 tour in the same vehicle. He was a surveillance operator, we call it Gib, guy in back, who would sit in the back of our Coyote right about here as an air sentry and then operate our surveillance equipment. And this was my patrol in Kabul, Afghanistan, back in 2004 when we were tasked with, you know, supporting the democratic election at the time. The Taliban threat was out there, but we weren't getting into a lot of combat. I was a recce soldier, so I did a lot of observation tasks and patrolling and things like that. We weren't meant to go out and seek out and destroy, right? But we did do support operations with other units to engage what Taliban was around. Just we never saw anything, really. I think the most exciting thing we ever saw, me and Ed, was a riot that we had to do some security around, and it got pretty hairy. But we were, again, watching that through our surveillance equipment. Anyways, long story short, that's where I met a guy named Stu Language, and I'll talk about him at the end. But that tour was very different. We weren't getting in a lot of slap fights with anybody, and we were more likely to get accidentally engaged by one of the other nations scrambling around over there. There were so many nations in Kabul at the time. There was more likelihood of us getting into contact with one of them by accident than there was with the Taliban. So if you fast forward to my next tour in 2006, I'm deployed with Ed again. And other friends that were from that tour. And this is a very different tour. This time we head out to the Panjwai area, and we go to Masamgar, and that's home for our next 6-7 months. And that's a daily fight. Either we're getting rocketed every day, or one of our troops are getting in contact. Either one of the infantry units out there, the engineers, and like our tanks. It was a fight for every piece of ground out there that we were treading on, and this was all so we could build highways and help get access to farm roads so they could get to their stuff to trade markets more easily without compromise. Everything had to do with routes and security, so these construction crews could come in during hours where the Taliban weren't going to hit them, like broad daylight, right? So everything had a security element, and I'm not going to go into all the operational parts of it. Suffice it to say, this was all just to build a big stretch of road, right? So we go out there. That's me. That's young Corporal Torney back in the day. I'm married, but I don't have children at this point. My wife is in the Army as well, and she's back home waiting for me to come home. That's my vehicle. That's the Sergeant Major's Lav, okay? 400 Charlie. And so I was the gunner for that on most ops, and then most other ops I was the driver, because me and the other corporal in that call sign, we were both at the same points in our career. We were both qualified every position on these vehicles. And we could go occupy tanks, so we were interchangeable. So we had this gentleman's agreement within our crew that one of us, if we drove on one op, then we would be the gunner on the next op. It's not really relevant, but that's how my crew worked, right? And the Sergeant Major was fine with that. And there's me trying to get... I missed my helicopter ride home trying to help other guys out, and I wound up staying an extra couple of days, but there's me going out on one more op. And if you see that look in my eye, there's still optimism there, right? And that's who I've always been, guys. I've always tried to see the silver lining. Even missing my helicopter home and being a little late going home and being in that shithole. There was an excitement about being there and doing your job, right? That you miss a lot. And this is who I am now. That's me and my son, right? So, whoa. Don't worry, we'll get to you, Shockwave. But I'm not really trying to tell you who I am as much as what my job was, which was I was the Sergeant Major's crew. And that gave me a responsibility to the squadron. For you Americans, that's a senior corporal, basically, who shows promise of leadership, and they're giving them more responsibilities because they know that some of the younger troops are going to look up to those guys. And there was a few of us. I was one of but a few in that squadron. And we had that on lock. Me, Ed, Nate, all these guys, you know, being the senior corporals for a bunch of troopers to look up to and to follow the example of was the way. And we did very well through a lot of it. And we had reasons to be proud of ourselves. I won't brag, but I'm not going to shun away from the truth. That was my rock star time. And it was theirs too, for a lot of us. Then we took our first casualty as a squadron. And it you know, you saw it coming. You'd been in contact so much, and you were taking so many more tasks on, trying to stretch your influence a little further down that route to try and, you know, provide that security, keep other troops resupplied. And it ended up on a bad op where we were all out, and I was at the back of the convoy with the supplies that we were going with, as the Sergeant Major's vehicle would. And I wasn't in that LAV. I was in a smaller vehicle. It's an M113 type. We call, you know, it was the Sergeant Major's standby vehicle while our LAV was in repair, but it had that crappy remote weapon system, RWS, and it wasn't great. And it certainly wasn't a vehicle you wanted to have the Taliban focus on if they had an 81mm out there, which they did that day. I think they had a couple, actually. And so, long story short, my buddy Ed and all the tanks, they're up forward, and they're coming under contact, and there's an 81 out there, and it's firing on armor. And my buddy Ed's tank throws track. Nate Hornberg was the first casualty, and he was a reservist from Calgary attached to the Strathconas. I think it's King's Own Calgary Regiment, I believe so. I get old and I can't remember the titles of things now, and that always bothers me. But Nathan was a really good guy, and I didn't get to know him very well. I got to know some of his friends that he came to us with from his regiment. Some of them were in our crew, and some of them became very good friends of mine over that tour. But Nate and I, we didn't have that much in common. We were on tour together, and he was I never had a bad bone beef with him at all. Like, he was a good guy. The reason he's special to me is because he was a heavy lesson for me to learn, and I can do this without emotion because, guys, while I have PTSD, I'm all right. I'm not one of those guys that's gonna go blubbering and whatnot. And if I ever did get emotional, I just reshoot the video like I did just 5 minutes ago. I'm usually pretty good at keeping it in cool and keeping it in perspective. And here's the thing. He saved my friend Ed's life, basically, the way I look at it. And it cost him his own. And I'll always see it that way. He put his vehicle, he was the driver of the ARF, which was sent to go help recover my friend's tank. And just a bad set of circumstances led to him passing away in that. And another couple maintainers were injured in that whole thing. And my friend actually had to deal more directly with it. I was at the back with the Esh. And this was a rough time for all of us. This was a big lesson. We spent that whole night trying to fight our tanks out of there. You know, were we successful in the long run? I guess so. But that night was a living hell for us. And it was for my driver, because that was his friend that had just been killed in that firefight, right? And he was a combat casualty for at least a month till we got him back. But he came back, and he did exemplary well. And he's had a fantastic career. He was a fantastic soldier, and I believe he's a fantastic police officer these days. So big shout out to them. They know who they are if they're out there. Anyways, the lesson I learned with Nate was, because I was the Sergeant Major's crew, somebody had to go through his bed space and take all of his kit and catalog everything and go through everything, because it's all going back to the parents, and you want to make sure, you know, there's no porn stashed away or anything weird, right? Like, you don't take anything away, but you remember where it's going. And it's very hard. If anybody's ever done that to a guy they worked side by side with, that's a very difficult task, because you can't help but to get to know them very, very, very well, especially if you have any astute or perception at all about you. And that person I got to know a lot better posthumously, and that's unfortunate. And that taught me a lot. Now, before this tour, because of my severe ADHD, which had gone undiagnosed at this point, I was always kind of a little bit of wild card. I always had weird energy, man, and I was able to keep the light and the morale of my guys up whenever I could, you know. And Nate was the first time where I knew better to even try. We got back, and I was like, I'm going to shut the fuck up, because everybody just needs it, right? And it took us a while, but we got back. We got back into it. Mike Hayakazi was the other guy that we lost on that tour, and Mike was a different story. Mike stung in a different way. By the way, the reason, if you ever hear me say, like, in future videos, the weight of a casket, it's because I know the weight of the casket. That's us sending it home. All right, and that's me at the front to the left there with my shaved head. That was a very sobering experience when you realize exactly what it is you're carrying and how many eyes are there to see it go, you know, and what it meant to everybody. It's an impactful moment. And if any of you have ever participated in a ramp ceremony in any way, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? I am not the guy that sits there and turns into jelly when I look back at these things. I learn from them. And I learn a lot about myself. And I learned I'm a much stronger person than I thought, right? So with Mike, the thing that stung about Mike was I talked about that responsibility as a senior corporal in that time to be a good leader and morale source for your troops, right? The troopers and the other corporals around you. And Mike was the perfect example of how easy that can be. Mike was the kind of guy that made your day easier in every single way. Either it was his work ethic or it was his smile. We have not since seen a guy like Michael Yuki Hayakaze. Okay, this guy was a pleasure to work with at every point. And I didn't get to know him well right away because he wasn't in the Sergeant Major's crew, he wasn't in admin troop, and he was on the tanks with my buddy Dan. And Dan was his crew commander, and that's how I knew him. And you go through this thing in the field where everybody just kind of swaps hard drives for movies when you're training, you know, or even overseas. If anybody had a new movie on their computer, you'd swap hard drives so you could download it off other guys. And everybody's doing that, you know, visiting Dan and his crew to do this stuff. But Mike's always out front and he's looking at his laptop. And it's not movies he's looking at. He was looking at home, where his family came from in Japan. And it was pictures of his uncle or his grandfather's place. And I remember sitting down with him and he walked me through all that. And just how energetic and connected he was to his family. I remember that really stuck to me. I'm big on family, right? Like family, all shapes and sizes. And Mike was the first Japanese-born Canadian kind of soldier I'd ever met. And I've been married to a Chinese Canadian for over 20 years. So I always like to see where the culture differences show up. And Mike showed me things in his family, and all I could say was, oh my God, that's beautiful. Like, he was eye-opening. And, you know, the things about Mike is he was the shittiest poker player I've ever seen. And he proved it to us on a daily basis overseas. Like, playing against poker was a pleasure because you knew you were getting Mike's money. Somebody was getting Mike's money. No bluff ability, overconfidence in hand, and like me, ADHD, so he barely paid attention to what was going on in the betting, right? So Mike couldn't play poker. But I talk about those two guys because they were the two losses we took while we were there. And then, guys, sadly, I took a third loss because when they sent Mike's body home, and then shortly after, we were all coming home, right? And it was a lot of administration. My buddy Stu was having a bad time. Stu is the gunner in my patrol from 2004. You remember I showed you there was 2 call signs there. Let's get that picture up right there. So I'm the gunner of one, Stu is the gunner of the other. And Stu and I had gotten really close on that tour. He helped me because I had just come from another regiment and was brand new to this squadron when I got thrown on this tour with these guys. Every single one of these guys in these crews were amazing. But Ed and Stu and my crew commander Rick, they always really stood out for different reasons, like they all did. But Stu and I connected in a way, like we were very like-minded, and both had a very good sense of humor, and we were both all about one-upsmanship against each other, and we had a good relationship like that. But after 2004, Stu kind of went down a dark road, and I kind of watched, you know, there was drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff, and a lot of depression, and he was having some issues. And while I was really close with him, I found it really hard to be the friend he needed because he was being the friend that wasn't ready to listen, right? And so that makes you guys kind of make a different path when one of you is getting ready to go on your next tour, which was my 2007 tour, and the other guy is he's on a decline that you can't help. So 2007 happened, we lose Nate, we lose Mike, and then Stu decides that he can't keep going. So that was the end for Stu. He passed away the day we came back, and that's how I came home from that tour. Was like out of a movie, guys. It was like out of, like, if 1,000 monkeys sat at 1,000 typewriters and wrote the saddest movie you could about a soldier's return, right? You know, you're just dealing from your bloody nose tour as we saw it. I just lost those two guys in weird ways, and then you're telling me my buddy could commit suicide. That really sucked. But I'm going to tell you something about these three guys to tie it all into who I am. Every one of them made me a better person. Everything I know about them is great. And I'm sharing it with you on the internet because I have some things to say about them really quick. One, Michael Hayakaze is a shitty poker player. Always was, always will be. But he was a great friend. Fantastic crewmate. And he's missed every day. And my regiment celebrates him at every opportunity. And we are still close with that family. There is love for the Hayakazes. And I miss you, Mike. All right? For Nate. I didn't get to know Nate until after. But I see everything Nate represented to his community and to his family. And I'll tell you, of all the people that went on that deployment, the purest of hearts, the one that wanted to do the most good, and the one that took the most pride in his work and the good he was doing for everyone, was Nate Hornberg. Nate Hornberg gave his life for something he believed in, and he gave his life for somebody I'm very close to. And I'll always appreciate that. And for Stu, well, I just miss Stu. All right, so how does this have to do with G.I. Joe? Guys, I can't help but look at Duke, and every now and then, maybe it's just the picture of him, but I just picture Nate. That's how my ADHD works. You would think, because of the racial diversity in Joe, that when I look at Tunnel Rat, say that would remind me of Mike. That doesn't. It doesn't, just because of their Asian. No, Mike Chuckles reminds me of Mike, because it's just, he's such a good, he just brightened your day. He had a great sense of humor, and there is just something fallible and predictable and beautiful about the nature of a person like that, that you miss them when they're gone. And then Stu was the dark but good-natured guy. I don't know, maybe that's the Dusty. Didn't Dusty go over to Cobra at some point? I don't know. It's where G.I. Joe steers you wrong when you're a little kid, right? Because they never let you deal with the death, right? They tried to with Duke, and then they changed their mind because Optimus Prime died in Transformers, and it didn't go well, right? So these silly little disconnects. Yeah, G.I. Joe is a fictitious universe. Beautiful toys. They're a big trigger for a lot of memories for me. And I think they are for some of you too. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say about that stuff. That counts as my Remembrance Day video. If you guys watch this, thank you. I don't care if anybody hits like. If it doesn't get a subscriber, that's fine. This is my Remembrance Day video, so I have the day. Tomorrow, they just focus on all the other stuff I'm trying to stay happy about. And thanks again for watching, guys. Love y'all. See you on the next video about Shockwave.